Um, Very much the photo of the bonfire or campfire in the background, it's very relevant to the Jewish tradition. There is a Jewish religious holiday called Lag BaOmer celebrated actually today. And for children in Israel, especially
Wow.
from secular families, it became a holiday of bonfires. So in the early evening of the holiday, which was yesterday evening, you could see all over the country many people light fires, cooked baked potatoes, hot dogs, and marshmallows roasted on stick, and probably telling and sharing many stories. What else can we do around the bonfire?
That's incredible. Guys, I think that deserves to for us to light our own bonfire. So let's share our fire with Udi. And thank you so much for joining. And I'll be off the air and be launching your presentation in a bit. Thank you so much. It's all
Thank you.
yours.
So, what is the meaning of trust? In the beginning of 2000, I moved from a long career as a journalist to establish a public relation agency with Ofra Light, who already had a PR agency. One of the first steps uh, was to open a bank account. So we came to Ofra's branch in Tel Aviv. And in the middle of the long process, the banker asked us about the signatory on the account. Would it be one or two signs? We did not speak about it earlier, so Ofra looked at me and at the banker and said, I think that one is okay. And when we finished and left the bank, she said, I really hate dealing with the financial issues of the business. Do you mind taking charge of it? I said, of course, no problem. But later, I was thinking, if I were instead of Ofra, would I do the same with a new business partner? Well, this is the meaning of trust, I think. Hemingway said that the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. It sounds too simple, but if you think about it more deeply, the real point is that to distrust is a choice. To distrust is a choice. So we should choose to trust. And the conclusion of for leaders is if you are looking to create a trusting environment, you must be a trusting leader. After Hemingway's simple definition, you can see here one more complex, but I think very accurate. Dr. Brené Brown, a researcher and storyteller, liked to quote Charles Feltman, a senior executive coach, that trust is choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else. The idea is that when you trust someone, what you make vulnerable can range from concrete things like a job, a promotion, or particular goal to less tangible things like a belief. Whatever you choose to make vulnerable to the other's action, you do so because you believe their action will support it or at the very least will not harm it. Brown used to talk about 7 elements of trust under the acronym BRAVING: boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. Setting boundaries is making clear what is okay and what is not okay, and why. Reliability means do you reliability means you do what you say. And at work, this means staying aware of your limitation. Accountability means you own your mistake, apologize, and make amends. Vault means you don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share. Integrity means choosing courage over comfort, choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy, and practicing your values. Non-judgment means we can talk about how we feel without judgment. And generosity means extending the most uh, generous interpretation to the words and action of others. This comparison between high trust and low trust company is very important, and the result of this research by Paul Zak are not surprising. Paul Zak is a Harvard professor. He is known for researching the neurological connection between trust, leadership, and organizational performance. His researchers show that the neurochemical oxytocin is released in the brain after a positive interaction with others, including strangers, and it signals that other person appears to be trustworthy. In this recent Harvard Business Research Journal, Zach shared that there is a direct correlation between the amount of oxytocin a person's brain produces and the level of trust they feel in any given situation. He found that oxytocin levels significantly decrease when we feel stress. He also found a direct link between oxytocin levels and empathy, which is empathy, which is essential for creating trust-based relationship and trust-based organization. So the higher the oxytocin, the higher the empathy. The higher the empathy, the deeper the connection. So organizations that create work environment that stimulate oxytocin production among colleagues are expected to have high trust culture. Another critical point is the question, who is more trusted? A recent trust survey by the global public relations firm Edelman found that people now have more trust in their employer than in government and the media. It's based on over 36,000 respondents in 28 countries. You remember that earlier I said that to distrust is a choice. So Edelman found that distrust is the default. 59% in 24 countries said, my tendency is to distrust until I see evidence that something is trustworthy. That's amazing. Anyway, businesses are more trusted than government in 23 of 28 markets. So this presents a significant opportunity for faith-driven business leaders to start or maybe continue using their influence among their employees. And overall, we should remember that the employee experience is a key to trust. If you're asking why there is more trust in business than in government, here is a good example. The story of Marriott and Arnie Sorenson. At the end of 2016, Marriott acquired Starwood Hotels, including all the brands you can see here, and became the world's largest hotel chain. But a year before the pandemic started, Marriott faced major crisis. It began with hacking exposed data of 500 million guests, and a few months later, an announcement that its CEO, Arnie Sorenson, has pancreatic cancer. So what could a CEO of a global company with 175,000 employees say in March 2020? We can agree that trust is very critical in such a situation. So Sorenson made a 6 minutes video message for Marriott's employees around the world. At the beginning, he said his team was concerned about his bald look. He said, my new look is what was expected as a result of my medical treatment. And I feel good, and my team and I are 100% focused on overcoming the crisis we face. For about 5 minutes, he described the complex situation and shared what could be said on Marriott's business in those days. But I chose to share with you only the last minute of this video. Artem, please go.
In 2 weeks, I will mark my 8th anniversary as CEO, a position I accepted on the heels of 2 legends in hospitality. As a leader, I've experienced so many wonderful highs and a good number of challenging lows. I can tell you that I have never had a more difficult moment than this one. There is simply nothing worse than telling highly valued associates, people who are the very heart of this company, that their roles are being impacted by events completely outside of their control. I've never been more determined to see us through than I am at this moment. While it's impossible to know how long this crisis will last, I know we as a global community will come through the other side, and that when we do, our guests will be eager to travel this beautiful world again. When that great day comes, we will be there to welcome them with the warmth and care we are known for the world over. As I close, I encourage you to please take care of yourself, your friends and family, and the community around you. I wish you good health and a sense of optimism. Together, we can and we will overcome this, and we'll thrive once again. Thank you, and be well.
So what do you think about the video? Yes, you can notice that Sorenson got chucked up a few times. He could try making new video shots, but chose not to do so. And sadly, Sorenson passed away in February 2021. Yeah, thank you. So So let's see some signs of lack of trust. After we talked about the importance of trust, and I think that the signs are clear, but withholding opinions or hesitation to ask for help could be a result of shyness. So it's not always signs of lack of trust, and leaders should pay attention to these signs. David Grossman claims in his book, You Can't Not Communicate, that everything we do and say communicates something. So not communicating is not an option. And trust is essential to boosting employee engagement and motivation. When team members trust each other, they communicate openly and honestly, align around common purpose, and take risks. And but it's not only about taking risks. Employees that don't make decision could also be a kind of a red flag for organization. It's important to say that you don't trust until you've been trusted. There is a give and take on both sides, a mutual exchange. Transparency will help you build trust within your organization, but only if it is truly a two-way street. Developing a culture of trust starts with you demonstrating it. For example, you can pick a small task and accept that it may fail. If it fails, ask yourself, was it a lack of clear message, lack of time or resources? Fix what failed and provide a second chance. Also, show your vulnerability. Say it. I don't know. Show your team that you trust them to teach you something. Share a story how you learned something new from teams in the past. All the C's here are true, but I think that three of them are the most important, and I'll talk about them. Communication means how well do you communicate your ideas and decisions? Do you find that people understand what you are trying to convey? What do you do to ensure effective two-way communication? The main tool here is to move from abstract messages to concrete communication. And you are doing that based on stories. That's the best tool. Caring, do you care about your organization and the people who report to you or your colleagues? What do you do specifically to demonstrate that care? Do you listen to your employees and take time to learn more about them? And clarity means helping your team see the big picture, understand the strategy, decision, and changes. We are all inundated by news and opinions through traditional media and social media, so you must acknowledge the unique challenges of this situation and focus on the future. Explaining the why. We like to talk many times about explaining the why. People want to know why do you do something? So how to build a high trust culture? I'm back again to communication, promote communication. As I said, communication is by far the most important component of team collaboration. We know this principle from our private lives. The better we get to know people, the more we trust each other. By stories on values, I mean stories on values like transparency and fairness, for example, and sharing examples based on your experience, or ask others questions like, what experiences have you had that have taught you that you are trustworthy? That will lead them to stories, to find stories. In leadership, we are talking about leading by example, which means to guide others through your behavior instead of your words. Here I'm talking about leading through examples, which means using examples to communicate better. And of course, as I said before, help your team see the big pictures. Feedback and trust are also two-way street. Authentic two-way feedback is building trust in collaborative decision-making. But feedback is also based on trust. So demonstrate that you welcome both positive and negative feedback. It's very important. And remember again, the vulnerability. Effective feedback depends on the ability to reveal vulnerability. In storytelling, we use very often, we like to use different analogies and metaphors. And Analogies and metaphors could be a fantastic communication tool. And I like the example of elephants and penguins. Do you have a culture that is more like herd of elephants or a waddle of penguins? When a member of a herd or waddle is sick, both elephants and penguins will form a circle around the sick member. But elephants and penguins behave differently. Elephants form a circle facing outwards around the sick elephant to protect and defend the elephant. On the other hand, penguins form a circle facing inward around the sick penguin, and they peck them to death, actually. Think about the culture you have in your team or your organization regarding performance, regarding performance. When a member of the team can't do their job or make a mistake, are you a herd of elephants and help them, or you are reacting like a waddle of penguins? Think about it. Now, a few words about remote working, which became very popular because of the COVID effect. Well, dog walker is one of the jobs that has only a remote version, but many jobs can be done both at workplace and at home. According to a February 2022 Gallup study of over 12,000 US employees, about 4 in 10 workers are currently hybrid, working remotely part of the time, or working entirely from home. And regardless of their current situation, nearly 7 in 10 workers say they would prefer to be fully remote or hybrid. Working remotely impacts trust. We tend to go first to those we already know, and it's easier to ask someone a question right in front of you than take the time to put it in an email or a Slack message. I found that the hybrid working during the pandemic is leading many organizations to the conclusion that they should find more value in productivity metrics and behaviors than in busyness metrics. So the main point here is more trust and less monitoring. For example, ask yourself or your colleagues, what did you find that you were more, uh, sorry, when did you find that you were more productive from home? Or when was the last time you received recognition or praise for doing good job from home? That can lead you or lead them to a story on the value of trusting remote working. Well, it's a nice way to close with George MacDonald, a Scottish author and poet. Uh, what does it mean? You may not always trust the person you love, but you can always love the person you trust. So to be trusted is a greater compliment than being loved. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today, and Yeah, it's really an important topic. Guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask Udi while he's here. I do also have one question on trust. Is uh, if you could choose, what would you help people exchange in team between each other? And maybe what's a way to like elicit this story to help them share these? Because, well,
Sorry, you were disconnected. I didn't hear you.
let's try once more. Do you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So what one story would you help people in a team share to help them build trust? And what is a way to elicit this story to help them find it?
The best way, to find stories is to ask questions that are leading people to find the story and the best questions are starting with the where and the when, because that lead them to something that happened, something that they faced situations that is relevant to this to any topic, and trust is one of them. So I think that the best way is to build a little story bank around this topic and ask these questions your employees that will motivate them to find stories.
Okay, that's a good advice. Building a story bank is really essential. Okay, one more question from Tatiana. What methods would you use to raise the trust if it's in distant, maybe with clients online or in the team in different cities?
It's a very good question. Many organizations are thinking about this because it's a problem when you have many employees who are working remotely, but and they are trying to establish coffee breaks online, and but I think that it's there is no one recipe for this question. It depends on the organization, on the relationship between the team members, between the leaders and the employees, and so on. So every organization pick another thing to do it.
Okay. While we're waiting for more questions, I have this one. You've actually mentioned it. Some people believe that trusting can happen after the person has earned trust. And I know some top managers and leaders who believe that, well, first of all, this, and then that you don't need to be open and vulnerable to build trust, because trusting can happen if there are enough documents or, some papers that describe all the person has to do. So you have control, so you don't need trust. So what would you tell these kinds of people? Like, what's the point of trust if you have control?
I think the principle is that before you rush to analyze products and market condition or update your sales plan, get to the root cause, and the heart of it's trust. Get to understand your employees and how they feel working for you and for the company, and get to know what they actually do in the name of those feelings. So that you can productively manage your culture. And trust is very important to build the culture.
But
I
what
hope
about,
it's
yes, I understand this, but what about the people who believe that they don't need trust because they have enough control because of the, regiments and other things that prescribe people to act a certain way. So how can we inspire them to look in the direction of building trust instead of strengthening control?
I think when people like you mentioned, when they will face a situation in which trust is critical, they will understand it.
Maybe an example.
It's not theoretically, yeah. Sorry.
Maybe an example of like something like that you were talking about.
You know, I I can give you an example. I'm using I'm using this example with insurance agents. It's trust on selling, another topic, but maybe it's a good example. And I tell them that when they are saying, when they say to their clients, believe me, I'll give you the best price. This is one option. And the other option is, I'm doing my best to find you the best price, but you always can check me on it. So on the first version, you ask the client to trust the price. On the second one, you ask them to trust you as a person. So in circumstances that you can explain how much important is to trust you as a person, you can show to everyone, and he will understand. He will understand it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have two more questions from Tatiana and Lyubov. Tatiana is asking, how can we nurture trust if I personally, as a leader, am only in the beginning of my journey and I don't have any authority in the team I am in?
If she's
She's a new leader, so is there a way to raise trust if you don't have authority yet?
you should take authority, but that's maybe the best. But you should talk with other leaders and learn about what they feel and how they deal with trust. And I think it will come. It will come sometime. You don't have to push on it. You will start to feel the importance of it in the next example that you'll face kind of situations that forced you to deal with trust or persuade your employees that you are trustworthy.
Okay, thank you so much. And one final question from Lyubov. Do you think that emotional intelligence and trust are connected to each other?
Yes, it was. I know it was on the topic of my talk, and I didn't mention emotional intelligence in my talk. But if you could go through over my presentation, you understand that it's very connected. It's people with high emotional intelligence uh, could could be more trusted, and it's go hand with hand. Yes.
Okay. Udi,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you so
I
much.
have one final question for you, and it's a tradition, you know. So a story forms the culture, and the culture forms the stories. It's a circle. And what do you think came first, cultures or
First,
story?
cultures and story. So theoretically, stories come first. As we know, the oldest stories ever told are painted on cave walls, maybe before we can define a specific culture. But we are talking here about an organizational environment, and here culture, I think, should be first. Like with the strategy, first you define your culture based on the values, goals, knowledge, and beliefs, and then find the stories that can support you on implementing the organization culture. So if you want to change the culture, you need new stories to be told. But in organizational environment, for me, culture will be first.
Awesome. Thank you so much for
Thank you so
joining
much.
us today and for sharing your fire and your holiday with us. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much, Atom, and good luck with the conference.
Thank you so much. Guys, let's share our fires
Share
with
our
Udi,
fire.
and that will be it for today. I think that was a masterful delivery on trust and stories. I personally would like to share one story with you, which I've learned from Jeff Mead, one of the speakers of our conference. So in his book, telling the story, The Heart and Soul of Successful Leadership, he shares the story of a man who switched his job from being a corporate leader to working in government, in tax and revenue and customs of Great Britain. So I think his name was James Varney. James, yes, James. So he was not trusted a lot in the first days because he was from corporate world and people were from government, and there was this tension. So James came to Jeff and to his team and asked for help, and they together excavated and crafted a story, and I will share with you a bit from this story. So James shared that when he was young, he was a boy, and after World War II in Great Britain, there were a lot of bombing sites, and he was oftentimes walking with his father, who was, working where a man with strong hands could be useful. He was a constructionist. He was something like that. He had many jobs at the time because the country was in ruins. And a lot of times after school, his father would pick him up and they would come home together walking. And he remembers vividly one of the walks when his father walked him to a port with ships in it. And some ships were sunk, and there were, these trenches and sites where bombs have exploded, and everything is in ruins. So he sat down on one knee and he said, looking him in the eye, he said, James, someday a generation of strong people and strong men will be old enough to mend these docks, to rebuild the hospitals and schools, and to make Great Britain great country once more. And this moment, he retold to the fellow workers at the government, and he said, I'm here with you in tax and revenue to make sure that every pound and every penny we collect as tax service goes to serve this noble goal for making our country great again. So he was elected twice, if I remember correctly, with a vote after that to be the head of this commission. And I believe that this is exactly about how trust is built. You share why it is important for you, not what you're working towards, not zачем, not your motivation, but something from the inside. If you resonate with this story, please share some fire. And Tatiana, I will be, of course, sharing a list of literature on storytelling later on in the chat. So you can always join our Telegram chat. But for now, let's take a short break.